It's the weekend. At least it's a weekend for me. If you have a normal work week and this is your weekend, I wish you a very, very good weekend. I know when I was in the uh, regular workforce, so to speak, they theoretically 9 to 5, but in reality, something like 7 until whatever. Weekends, when they came, were always, always gratefully accepted. It's like everything is gratefully accepted. So without further ado, I am going to read today's reading, which is called Hanging in There. Hanging in There. Of course, the reading is from the Science of Mind magazine, The Daily Guides, this month written by Reverend Dr. Margaret Stortz. Hanging in There. God cannot fail, and we shall cease failure when we identify ourselves with the Supreme Source. And that's from This Thing Called Life on page 41. From the Science of Mind textbook, he says, and it's on page 109, he says, oh, why does my thing do that? Hold on a second. Hold on a second. This mass is unbelievably sensitive. This is what Ernest Holmes says in the Science of Mind magazine. I mean, Science of Mind textbook. I'll get it right eventually. So humans must be created with the possibility of limitless freedom and let alone to discover ourselves. And that's really in line with lots and lots and lots of philosophies in the world. Christian, free will, the idea of free will is what most Christians believe. Not all. There are some who believe in predestination, that everything is planned out for you beforehand, so there's no free will. But most people believe in free will, and that's what he's talking about here. And this is what Reverend Margaret's got to say. There is wisdom in knowing when we're done with something, when it's time to release or shut down whatever may be going on, so we're not engaging in the fruitless use of precious energies. There is also great wisdom in knowing when it is right to hang in there, when the lack of pursuit will deny us an opportunity to make an important completion. The infinite mind has no opinions on how we use its energies. It doesn't waggle a finger at us or give a disapproving look if we do not complete all that we say we will do. We know that the law of mind says yes to us. Yes, you want to go on. Yes, you want to cease this line of action. No judgments, no condemnation. It is only we who make these distinctions, which is why we need to be clear about when to stop or when to hang in. We can ask ourselves, is it really important to see this through? Or is it an ego trip? Am I going to be adding something valuable to life so that my continued efforts are worthwhile? And not least, will my mental practices benefit from the concentrated effort required to find completion? It is always ours to say, I will or I won't. This is what it means to have the freedom to use the infinite mind in service to good. So, simply put, and summing it up, we're saying here that we have the free will to choose how we act and how we respond to things. And it's always struck me that, especially with the law, and I'm not talking about the law of mind, I'm I'm talking about just regular law. Well, justice, quote unquote, which is not always justice, but anyway, that's not a story. It's excuse me. It's always struck me as odd that we punish people based on what they've done more than what they intended to do. Because I think behind every act is an intention. And in my mind, it's the intention that really matters. And I'll give you a case in point. If somebody intends to commit murder and they succeed, they're treated one way. If they intend to commit murder, but they don't succeed, they're treated in a completely different way. But really and truly, when you look at it, it's the intention behind everything that really matters. And in our actions, it's the intention that matters. For instance, there's always this big deal in most religious organizations. I don't know outside of Christianity and closely related religions, but certainly within Christianity, probably Judaism and New Thought and others that are kind of closely associated. The idea of tithing, it comes up, and then there's all these arguments about should it be 10% or should it not be 10%? And in reality, that is irrelevant. The 10% is really irrelevant to me. All right. I know a lot of people would disagree, say it's got to be 10%. Is it 10% of gross? Is it 10% of net? A lot of people say it's 10% of gross. If you're a business owner, it can't be 10% of gross. Why? Because you may not make 10% profit from what you do. So there's got to be some reason in it, but that's not what I'm really talking about. What I'm talking about is this. I think that you give in proportion to how you feel comfortable in giving, to the extent that you feel comfortable. It's no use giving 10% if you give it unwillingly. It's better to give 3% incredibly willingly, in my humble opinion, because it's the intention behind the act that matters. I'm giving 10% because he told me I've got to. No, I don't think that should be the case. I'm giving 5% because I think that's what I can afford and I think it's a reasonable amount. I'm giving 20% because I can afford it and I'm happy doing that. Life to me is about intention. What is your intention when you do something? So, our task over the next 24 hours is to take a close look at our intentions when we're doing stuff. Maybe look back in retrospect and say, well, what was my intention really when I did that? Did I offer to do the cooking tonight because I wanted to get in good with my partner, or did I do it because I willingly want to help share in the tasks of, this home? So, excuse me, I still got a bit of a cough. So anyway, so I kind of turned this around from what it was originally, which was about hanging in there, and I kind of turned it around to it's about intention. But the hanging in there is about discernment. It's about looking, kind of stepping back and looking at it and saying, is it worthwhile hanging in there? Even take it into prayer, however you pray. Take it into your meditation, your quiet time, and just kind of step back from it and look at it and say, is it worth my effort going all out at this thing or not? So, two things I've got to offer you tonight. One Margaret Stortz has got to offer you, which is about hanging in there. And I accidentally stumbled on intention because when I was originally going to do this reading, or when I originally read it to redo it, I didn't even think about intention. But anyway, there you are. So I hope you take this and cogitate on it, think about it. And if you like this message, pass it on because giving is always good. When you find something you like, especially in this regard, share it. It's always good. Reverend Lisa I am sharing now that Reverend Lisa will be back tomorrow morning at 9:15. We're not in competition with each other. We do different things. We do a reading each day. We have a different style. We take different amounts of time and we tell you different messages, but the messages are all from one source. And by and large, I don't think I have ever any issues with what Reverend Lisa says. I don't know about the other way around. I would hope it will be the same way. So 9:15 tomorrow morning, she'll be back. I'll be back hopefully 5 o'clock tomorrow evening. Today didn't work out. I'm not going into the story as to why it didn't work out, but it was not my decision not to be here at 5 o'clock. I calculated everything, but life got in the way. So anyway, please take care of yourselves. That is equally important. Please, please, please take care of yourselves. It's good. Oh, one thing, and I'll remind you again tomorrow. This weekend, we quote lose an hour unquote. Why? Because the clocks here in the US, and I think in Canada as well, go forward an hour. Europe, it's going to be a few weeks later. So if you make contact with Europe on a fairly regular basis, like I do, then the good news is that we're an hour less apart than we normally are. So makes things a little bit easier. So until next time, namaste.